A lovely afternoon to our viewers. You're watching Communication 101, and I am Daniel Dulnuan, your host for today. You know what they say, great relationships are based on clarity, not mind reading. Besides, if people could read my mind, I would definitely be punched or slapped a lot. Well, don't worry, because I've got special guests with me today that will help me shed light about this issue. Please welcome Bea, Chance, Chen, Justin, Jasmine, Mitt, Kate, and Kirsten. So, Chance, would you mind elaborating on what myth about communication will we be discussing today?
So, one of the myths of communication is this: when two people are in a close relationship, neither person should have to communicate needs and wants explicitly. The other person should know what these are. But of course, this assumption is at the heart of many interpersonal difficulties. People aren't mind readers, and to expect them to be sets up barriers to open and honest communication.
And to help you, we have this 30-second video that will compare the expectations that we put on other people we are close with versus reality. Here, we will see how another person wouldn't be able to know what's on one's mind unless it is explicitly stated.
Everyone gets their girl flowers, but remember the first time we met?
Aw, you remember that?
I'm gonna put this cactus right here so that every time you go to sleep, you remember the first time we met.
Aw, you remember that?
Remembered what?
When we first met, I was studying cacti.
Cactuses.
No, it's cacti, but it's still sweet that you remember.
I'm gonna put this cactus right here so you know what it feels like to sleep next to somebody with prickly legs. Shave them. Look, we need to talk. Oh, look at me! I'm not gonna shave my legs.
So, those were the two examples. Now we move on to the analysis of these situations.
So, from what we've seen from the video, we can infer that although most individuals understand that expecting others to read their minds is impractical, they are still upset and enraged whenever their deepest unspoken ideas go unanswered. There is a misconception and demand in close relationships that mind reading is not only a valid premise, but a partner who failed to expertly understand feelings and act accordingly is uncared.
In addition, some reasons why people implicitly communicate are to avoid offending the receiver, to avoid becoming too emotional or vulnerable, and to leave a gap for possible denial. However, there is a price for not verbalizing messages. The message would not be exactly decoded in the context the sender intended it to be.
So, what exactly is the cause of this phenomenon? According to Chartier, some people believe that because they are transparent to themselves, they are transparent to others, which may be the root cause for the assumption that people are supposed to understand our thoughts or desires even without communicating or verbalizing them.
As for the receiver, intuition as the source of information or messages can only go so far in deducing correct assumptions and acting accordingly henceforth. Although it is quite reliable in producing a general idea or a gut feeling of the intended message of the sender, as said in the previous statements, people, again, are not mind readers.
That's interesting. But I also read that, according to Chartier, there are multiple factors that contribute to faulty assumptions and consequently miscommunication. Would you happen to know these factors?
Well, to answer your question, a person's definition of message clarity, attitude, psychological frame of reference, and existing communication skills are among the factors that contribute to faulty assumptions and miscommunication.
I see. It seems to me that this myth is more complicated than it seems. So let's move on to debunking the myth. Justin, would you like to start?
Okay, so to start off, one principle of communication is that communication is inevitable. Even without the intention of responding to someone, the lack of response is already a response itself. Hence, communication will always occur. Next, second, communication has a purpose. For the people who seek to maintain their close relationships with others, they must remember that communication is needed to do so. According to Rubin, Fernandez Collada, and Hernandez Sampieri in 1992, one of the five reasons why people engage in interpersonal communication is to relate. This is commonly seen in those who aim to interact and establish connections with others.
Additionally, adjustment is necessary in communication. In the communication accommodation theory, the speaker and the listener are both adjusting to each other's communication style and habits. According to Giles and Ogay in 2007, the communication accommodation theory states how people alter their speaking style to either increase or decrease their closeness with others.
I would also like to add that communication exists in a context that affects the meaning of both verbal and nonverbal messages. Even between two people in a close relationship, it is important to understand the different aspects of context in order to discern the meaning of one person's message. To add to that, there is also an emphasis on feed forward messages or fatigue communication when a person desires to maintain one's relationship with another person.
However, there must also be feedback messages in order to let the other person know whether you agree or disagree with their statement. This allows both people to adjust and accommodate each other's requests so as to attain mutual understanding.
To connect what Chan said regarding nonverbal communication, nonverbal communication is vague in nature, which is why implicit communication is in conflict with explicit communication in some circumstances. Such implied messages are communicated in various channels aggressively or subtly. As a result, the message may or may not be deciphered as it has been intended to be or not be interpreted at all.
Effective communication occurs when the communicator takes responsibility for their own thoughts, feelings, and overt behavior, when they own what they do. Typically, people who interact with one another frequently end up becoming effective communicators to one another, thus leading to close relations. However, not with the assumption that the people who are in close relations would be able to figure out once creates a barrier between the two parties.
That's true. I agree with what you all said. Healthy relationships are built over open communication of doubts, concerns, thoughts, and such towards clear understanding and problem resolution. The assumption that the other person already knows your needs and wants should not be practiced as it only results in further miscommunication and disappointment. Not only would it help meet your needs, but also promote a connected relationship. As always, we should remember that people cannot magically understand what we want or what we think unless we tell them. So that is all for today. We hope you learned something. Once again, I am Daniel Dulnuan and you're watching Communication 101.
So let's now move on to our memes. The first meme shows a simple interpretation of the said myth of communication. When the man asks what's wrong, the woman does not convey her thoughts. Rather, she ends the conversation instantly. This situation would not lead to a quick and authentic resolve between the two parties because the two communicators may have a different perception of the problem.
The second meme shows another interpretation of the myth. In this meme, the first person messages a hello miss to the other person, but that person leaves the message in the same status. The first person proceeds to conclude that the other person is not interested in the message in general and is already rejecting them without even hearing their reply. This situation may be stressful to both parties, especially if none of them will try to communicate their concerns and misunderstandings. That is all, and thank you for listening.